Jacob Zuma's legacy is one that has been intertwined with South Africa's modern history. A man who was once hailed as a freedom fighter, he later became one of the most controversial figures in the country's political landscape. Zuma served as president from 2009 to 2018, but his journey to power and his reign were far from simple. From his early days as a revolutionary in the struggle against apartheid, to his leadership of the African National Congress, ANC, and ultimately to his presidency, Zuma became a figure of both admiration and scandal. Yet, behind the headlines and political drama, another side of Zuma's life unfolded. A deeply personal story involving 6 women who stood by him, shared his life, and bore witness to his power and his flaws. What happened to these women after their marriages? How have they lived since their relationships with one of Africa's most powerful and controversial men ended? To truly understand the complex legacy of Jacob Zuma, we must explore the lives of the women who were once at his side, their struggles, their silence, and the truths they are only now beginning to reveal. Jacob Zuma's rise to prominence began long before he assumed the presidency of South Africa. A former intelligence chief of the ANC, Zuma was a key figure in the struggle against apartheid, known for his resilience and commitment to the liberation of his people. His name became synonymous with revolution, resistance, and defiance against the oppressive system. But with power came scandal. While the world focused on his political and legal battles, including the infamous state capture allegations and charges of corruption, another, often quieter narrative unfolded in Zuma's personal life. This was the story of his relationships with multiple women, each one part of the complex web of power and politics that surrounded him. These women, all from different walks of life, had their own stories to tell. Stories marked by ambition, love, betrayal, and ultimately survival. Let's explore what happened to these women after the public attention faded and their lives moved away from the glare of the media spotlight. One of the first women to enter Jacob Zuma's life was Nkosana Dlamini Zuma, a woman who was more than just his wife. She was his equal. Nkosana, a trained medical doctor and a prominent anti-apartheid activist, married Zuma in 1982 while they were both in exile. Their marriage was a partnership that represented strength, resilience, and shared political ideals. Together, they became one of South Africa's most formidable power couples, with Nkosana taking on key roles within the ANC and later, the government. The couple had 4 daughters together, but their marriage, like many in the political sphere, could not withstand the pressures of power. In 1998, after years of strain, Nkosana filed for divorce. She never publicly criticized Zuma, but political insiders whispered about power struggles, infidelity, and Zuma's growing political ambitions. Despite the breakdown of their marriage, Nkosana's journey only continued to soar. She took on powerful roles in the African Union, became the chairperson of the African Union Commission, and even challenged Zuma in the ANC leadership race. In her 70s now, Nkosana remains a force in South African politics, continuing to shape policies, issue public health guidelines, and use her platform to advocate for change. Her legacy, strong, capable, and unapologetic, speaks volumes, overshadowing any scandal. Not every story, however, ended on such a triumphant note. Kate Mancho, Zuma's second wife, remains one of the most tragic figures in his life. Known for her devout faith, private nature, and deep devotion to her family, Kate married Zuma in 1976 and gave birth to 5 children. Despite her outward composure behind the scenes, Kate struggled with the toll of living in Zuma's shadow. For 24 years, she stood by him, but the emotional burden she carried grew too heavy to bear. In December 2000, Kate took her own life. Her suicide note, which simply read, "24 years of hell," spoke volumes about the private torment she endured. Although her death raised questions about the emotional abuse she may have suffered, no investigation ever followed. At her funeral, Zuma appeared devastated, but he never publicly addressed the contents of her note or the events that led to her tragic end. Kate's daughter, Thwile, later became one of the youngest chiefs of staff in South Africa's government, but her rise to power was met with harsh criticism, with many accusing her of benefiting from her father's influence rather than her own merit. Kate's story is one that is often overlooked in official narratives, but those who knew her remember a woman who sought peace but was instead caught in the political storm surrounding Zuma. Her grave in Johannesburg remains largely forgotten by the media, but for those who remember, it marks the silence of a woman who was never able to speak her truth. Zuma's third wife, Numpumalu Ntuli, known as Manuli, entered his life in 2008. A polished, educated woman, Manuli played the part of First Lady with grace, standing by Zuma's side during his presidency. But her marriage to Zuma was marred by political intrigue and scandal. In 2014, Zuma mysteriously fell ill, and suspicion was immediately cast upon Manuli. She was accused without trial of poisoning him, though there was no evidence to support the claim. Within weeks, Manuli was banished from Zuma's life, exiled from his home in Nkandla. For 5 years, she fought to regain access to her children and clear her name, but the political forces at play were too strong. Whether she was the victim of political maneuvering, falsely accused, or simply deemed inconvenient by those in power, Manuli's exile became one of the darkest chapters in Zuma's personal life. Today, she lives quietly in Durban, away from the media, and has rarely spoken publicly about her experience. Her story remains a painful reminder of how easily one's life can be upended by the political games of those in power. Then there is Thembeka Medivaz, Zuma's fourth wife, whose story is one of defiance and rebellion. Thembeka, a former banker and glamour figure, married Zuma in 2010 in a lavish ceremony attended by international dignitaries and heads of state. Young, stylish, and confident, she appeared to be the epitome of the First Lady. But behind the scenes, the marriage was falling apart. In 2020, Thembeka made headlines when she took Zuma to court over unpaid child support, claiming that he owed her over R500,000. In her legal papers, she accused Zuma of treating her like a disposable prop, rather than a partner. Her bold statement, "Being Zuma's wife was not a privilege, it was a burden," struck a chord with many South Africans. Since then, Thembeka has largely remained quiet, occasionally appearing at charity events and private parties. Though she no longer wears the First Lady's crown, her active resistance continues to resonate in South African society, particularly among women who have felt the weight of political power and exploitation. The youngest chapter in Zuma's complicated marital history belongs to Noni Suno, known as Lono. Noni, who was decades younger than Zuma, gave birth to their son in 2018. Unlike Zuma's previous wives, Noni refused to remain in the shadows. She joined the Real Housewives of Durban, where she shared glimpses of her emotional journey, often alluding to the silence, restrictions, and sacrifices she had made while being in a relationship with Zuma. "I was in love, but I was kept in the shadows," she once said, revealing the personal cost of being involved with such a powerful man. Today, Noni has transformed her image from being Zuma's partner to a prominent TV personality, businesswoman, and mother. She frequently posts about her faith, her son, and her growing sense of womanhood, reclaiming her identity in ways her predecessors never did. By breaking her silence, Noni has defied a long-standing tradition of quietude among Zuma's wives, becoming a symbol of empowerment and independence. Lastly, there is Suzakumalo, or Makumalo, Zuma's first wife. Married in 1973, she remains the most mysterious of all Zuma's wives. Little is known about her, as she has largely remained out of the public eye. Unlike the others, Makumalo had no children with Zuma, and her role during his presidency was largely symbolic. She did not appear at many public events and, in fact, is rarely seen at all. Some have speculated that her silence was a form of self-imposed exile, while others believe that her absence was part of a more insidious, quiet form of control. Makumalo has never given interviews, written a memoir, or commented publicly on her life with Zuma. Yet, despite her silence, her presence at Zuma's residence in Nkandla speaks volumes. Visitors to the estate occasionally glimpse her tending to the garden or greeting elders, but she remains a figure of mystery, the woman who saw it all but said nothing. In her quiet existence, Makumalo may hold the most profound story of all. Together, these 6 women bore Jacob Zuma more than 20 children. Some of his children have entered politics, while others have pursued business ventures or stayed out of the spotlight altogether. Dudu Zeni Zuma, perhaps the most well-known of his children, has expressed political ambitions and even announced his desire to run for president someday. Growing up with Zuma as their father, however, has never been simple. His children have lived a life of privilege and scrutiny, their futures intertwined with the choices their father made and the silent endurance of the women who raised them. 6 women, each with her own path, some left in silence, others in scandal. One left in heartbreak, but all of them reveal something vital. Behind every powerful man, there may be a line of women who paid the price of his ambition. And even in the palaces, where wealth and power reign, love can turn to fear. As South Africa continues to grapple with Zuma's political legacy, it's time to also reckon with his personal one. The women who lived behind those gates remember everything. Some still defend him, while others have broken their silence. Yet all of them reveal one undeniable truth. Behind the walls of South Africa's presidential estates, not everything was as it seemed. What do you think? Were these women victims, survivors, or silent enablers? If you've enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe and hit the notification bell for more powerful stories about the lives and legacies of the world's most influential figures. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in our next video.